Welcome to this episode of the Doug Sandquist Podcast. Where interested is interesting, and interesting people share their stories and build their biographies along the way. I'm your host, Doug Sandquist. I'm a dentist and a photographer, and now a podcast host. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Doug Sandquist, and on Facebook, Doug Sandquist Photo. And you can join our email list by going to DougSandquistPodcast.com. Today's guest is Dr. Bernie Villadiego. Hey, Bernie. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Doug.
Cool.
Doing well. Thanks.
All right, cool. As with all of our guests, I don't have a bio, and I haven't read a bio, but I will tell you a little bit about Bernie. I mean, Bernie is a friend of mine. We are photography buddies. We are also both dentists. We met probably about 10 years ago at a few dental conferences along the way. Ended up being photography buddies. We actually do put together photography tours for other dentists. And so I know quite a bit about Bernie, but I really don't know his full story. And that's the point of today's podcast, is to discover Bernie's real biography. You okay with that, Bernie?
Yeah. All those hours spent together in Iceland and Greenland, in a car. I'm surprised I haven't told you everything.
Yeah, there's still lots I don't know, So we're gonna start off with our 10 quick and easy starter questions. Okay? There's no maybes here. Yes or no is all you get. So number one is gummy bears or M&Ms?
M&Ms.
Sweet or salty?
Sweet, definitely.
Hot or cold?
Cold, because I can always put something on to get warmer.
Okay. Would you ever wear flip-flops to Disney World? Yes or no?
I've never worn flip-flops.
All right. Let's go. No reason to start at Disney World, I suppose.
No.
Are you an early riser or a night owl?
Oh, wow. I used to be an early riser. Now I'm a night owl. Then I'm back to early riser again. So it's back and forth. Let's say early riser.
Okay. Cow or chicken?
Since I get gout from cows, I'll go with chicken.
Okay. Short hair or long hair?
Well, since I haven't had a haircut because I can't go to a barber, long hair.
Tattoos.
Coronavirus.
Tattoos, yay or nay?
Nay.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee sweetened.
All right. Cake or pie?
Cake.
And the bonus question is,
Woohoo!
Sauerkraut, love it or hate it?
Hate it.
All right. That wasn't too bad.
And I do know what a sauerkraut is compared to your previous, yeah.
That was funny. Yeah, I didn't think that people didn't know what sauerkraut was, but that's okay. All right, Bernie, what's your earliest childhood memory? And where were you born? First of all, where were you born?
I was born in the Philippines in a place called Lucena City. And I remember it vividly because it's in the middle of nowhere in the boondocks, I guess you would say, in the Philippines. So I was born in the Philippines, came to the U.S. when I was 5. My father left for the U.S. when I was about 2.5, 3 years old. So he had an opportunity. He was a physician, so he had an opportunity to do a residency in the U.S. And so he left me with my grandmother. And then not too long, my mother left to join my father, and I was left with my grandmother. So I made her life, I guess, pretty exciting since I was a little brat. So.
So you spent a couple of years with your grandmother before you joined your parents over here?
Yes. What happened was it was in the 1960s, and it was during the Vietnam War. So the U.S. sent a lot of their physicians and a lot of their residents to fight in the Vietnam War, and they had a shortage of physicians. And so my father was able to stay in the U.S. because of that. So he was pretty high up there. He was the chief resident. And so they offered him citizenship in the U.S. if he decided to stay.
Oh, wow.
And so, of course, that's what he did. He stayed, and after a couple of years, he established his residency there in the hospital as well as in the U.S. And then my brother and I joined my mother and my father and ended up in St. Louis, Missouri.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. That's I actually didn't know that. I didn't know that that there was, due to the physician shortage, that your dad was, that's how he got here. I didn't.
Yeah. I also remembered a lot of things in the Philippines. I used to remember from my grandmother's balcony, we would have all these people, it's a third world country, the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And so, to have a balcony is a pretty big thing. And so I would always be in the balcony throwing things at the pedestrians down below and, just kind of create havoc, I guess. So.
Like you're a reigning terror to me.
Oh, yeah, it was fun. I was a short, pudgy little kid, though. I was fat.
I didn't know Bernie was fat. That's funny.
Yeah, I was like a little pumpkin running around.
So what were your summers like as a kid? I mean, I'm sure you had summers in the Philippines and you had summers here, right? So you kind of had both, right?
Yeah. Well, my summers in the Philippines, first I started in the Philippines. It was, I would spend time in my uncle's movie theater. And then there was a pool hall down the way. And so I would spend time in the pool hall where all the people would be just kind of hanging out. Until I got to the U.S. and then I found out about baseball. And so once I got to spending time in the U.S., the summers were baseball. I learned how to play tennis, so that was pretty fun. But most of the time, it was my parents joined a Filipino community in St. Louis, Missouri, and so they wanted to preserve the culture and the heritage. And since they wanted me to make sure that I don't forget it, they would always make me join these dance troupes. And so I would have to dance this dance called tinikling, which is like a little bamboo dance. And so I'm sure you probably did it in junior high or grade school or something. It's where two people have bamboo poles and then they tap it twice and then they slide it. And then someone's supposed to be dancing on top of it, trying to miss the bamboos from hitting your feet.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I had to do that for summers. And I also did this candle dance. So it was all cultural Filipino dancing that we did. And so my parents wanted me to be involved in that so that I understood the Philippine culture.
And traditions. So, try to keep them going.
Traditions. It was fun. And I met a lot of course, I have a lot of other Filipino friends that I grew up with. It's kind of interesting. We grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. We're all Filipino, but we never spoke Tagalog.
Oh, okay.
So I ended up losing the ability to talk Tagalog and speak. But my parents also spoke to me in Tagalog at home, so I maintained that. So I could understand most of it, but I can't really speak back.
Can't really talk back.
Yeah.
Cool. So what was your first job as a kid? Do you have any?
Besides mowing the lawn and taking the trash out, I guess those are chores more than a job. I actually, my first job, it was at a cookie place. It's called Cookies and More. And so it's kind of like a Mrs. Fields Cookies.
Oh, wow.
And so what we would do is we would just scoop up some cookie dough, put it on a tray, heat it up. And I remember that if the cookie doesn't come out perfectly round, then we'd have to trash it and throw it away. So instead of throwing it away, I just took those bad or retarded looking cookies and just kind of, took it home with me. And then I just gave it to my parents or relatives or friends and stuff. And so it was pretty good. working there.
But he loved you being the cookie man.
I also worked I also worked as a prep cook, believe it or not, in an Italian restaurant.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about cooking, but this place just needed some help, and it was an Italian restaurant, and I would make the pastas, roll it up, cut them, and then I'd make some cannelloni and some lasagnas, and that was pretty good. That's when I realized I didn't want to be a cook. It was too much work.
So was
and you smelled also when you
really?
When you go home. It's like you stink.
Yeah.
From all the
from the kitchen.
From the kitchen. So
was college a given growing up? I mean, was that pretty much a thing that you pretty much had to do? Like, was it your parents?
There was no choice, or else I'm kicked out of the house.
Really?
Yeah, I'd either go to college or they kick me out. So,
how did you decide on becoming a dentist? How did that come about?
Actually, I was not supposed to be a dentist. I was supposed to be a physician surgeon like my father. You know, just like everybody else. When you have a father that's a doctor, you're supposed to follow in their footsteps. And so,
what type of surgeon was your dad?
A abdominothoracic surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And so he made a big mistake, though, a very, very big mistake. What he did was he worked in a place in Illinois. So this place that he worked at is called Centerville Hospital, and it's outside. It's across the border from Missouri. It's in the Illinois side. And so back then, you know, it's pretty relaxed as far as being able to take people into the operating room. So at, I think, 13 years old, he was called in for an emergency appendectomy. And so my mother wasn't, I think my mother was out of town or something, so he was kind of stuck with me, and he didn't want to leave me in the house by myself. So he took me into the operating room and said, "Hey, watch us do surgery. Watch me do surgery." So he had me all suited up, cleaned up, you know, washed my hands, sterilized, you know, all that stuff. And when I went into the operating room, he was telling me about it, that this emergency patient is pretty large patient. So we'd have to go in there through the fat and all that, the adipose tissues. And so he was just preparing me for the surgery. And then when I was in the operating room, one of the nurses turned to my father and says, "I think your son's about to pass out here." So then one of the nurses took me outside the operating room. And ever since then, I guess I've been a little scarred. Yeah, exactly. So, but that was, I mean, I do oral surgery to this day, and you know, extractions and all that stuff. But I guess that's something that I just didn't want to do after that. So that's how I became a dentist. Also, I got hit in the face playing hockey. I ended up at the dental school at Creighton University, and that's when I learned more about dentistry, because I ended up needing a root canal. So I spent a lot of time in the dental school.
All right, that's cool.
And I still remember.
Yep.
I still remember this dental student that treated me, and if she ever hears this podcast, her name is Cindy Ichiryu, and she I believe practices in Hawaii, and so but. She made my root canal a very, very good experience, and that's when I decided, you know what, maybe I'll look into dentistry instead of medicine. So,
wow.
So Cindy, if you're out there, give me a call.
That's cool. So she was a dental student at the time while you were in college, right?
Yes,
right?
I was an undergrad.
So what year in college did you decide to become a dentist?
When I got hit in the face, I think it was junior year, or it might have been sophomore. I'm sorry, sophomore year. It was the winter break of my sophomore year. I was slugged in the face playing hockey, and I ended up at the dental school for an emergency root canal.
Wow. So what did your dad think about you when you made that decision to go to dental school instead of medical school? What was that like?
He kind of brushed it off and said, you'll get over it. And but after a while, he pretty much said, okay, that's if that's what you want to do. I mean, so
Was there
he was okay after a while.
Was there a belief like back then, like, when I was going to dental school, like going to dental school was just a little bit lower than the medical school. I mean, that's the way we always kind of felt, like you were kind of just taking a little, maybe an easier path or a little different path than the medical students. That's the way I always kind of thought. But I mean, we were made to believe that maybe, but I don't know if it was true or not. But
yeah, you're kind of like a second, you're second degree citizen. You're yeah, but yeah, my father was disappointed, but after a couple of years and being successful as far as being a dentist, he looked back and said, before my father passed away, he says, it's good that you became a dentist and you did what you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Because at the time, HMOs was starting to take over, and he saw that medicine was changing. It was no longer the private practice that used to be, and mm-hmm. So he says that the golden years of medicine kind of was when he was in it, and he didn't see a good future for medicine as far as being your own private practitioner. Mm-hmm. So he was okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I think in the end, I mean, we still specialize in one area of the body, so we're still physicians in that way. I don't really know why we're led to believe it's a different way, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So
we're all connected. It's still the body.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know how it all got disconnected some way, but I mean, you really can't have a body without a mouth or teeth. It's an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I mean, even now, we find out that the jaws, the TMJ is related to your spine, and if your spine is off, it can influence the position of your TMJ, your jaw joints, and vice versa. So it's all connected.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really have it. Yeah, you can't. It's true. You can't really have you can't take the body out of. You can't take the mouth out of the body and have it still be successful, basically.
Yeah.
So how did you so you played tennis in high school and college and coming up, and then what were your other hobbies?
Bowling. Yeah, well, one of the things that my parents like to do, and which in the Filipinos, in the community, love to go bowling. So they'd have all these bowling leagues. And so I would spend some of the weekends bowling on the weekends. And, I was kind of disappointed that there wasn't that many bowling teams in the universities to give scholarships. So, but it was fun. Yeah, bowling was one of them.
What was your average?
I was a pretty decent bowler. I was, back then, maybe 170, 180.
Wow. How close did you get to a 300 game?
279.
Wow.
Was my closest. So.
Were you good enough to have your own? Did you have your own shoes and your own ball?
Yes. And I actually had one of those wristbands also.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that when I came to California, it just so happens that my wife Marty, who's Filipina, she's a bowler too. So.
Oh wow! Do you still bowl today?
Occasionally, but not that often. But it was pretty fun. I mean, it was we would have Friday night bowling, midnight bowling leagues on Friday nights, and so we'd go there at 10, 11 o'clock in the evening, and then bowl past midnight, and they turn off the lights, and you'd have all these. It's kind of like a party disco type of thing. So that was way back then.
Disco. I think they still have that here. I think some of the hotels here have it. I think in Las Vegas. But it's interesting. My dad was on a bowling league when I was growing up, and every Thursday night that was his bowling night. So we I didn't really bowl. I never bowled much, but he used to bowl a lot too. It's kind of cool. Yeah. Must have been a thing back then.
Oh, it was really fun. I mean, it even got better after they got rid of the smoking.
Hmm. Yeah, it's true. Smoking and bowling way back when went hand in hand, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So how did you get into photography? I don't know if I've ever asked you that before.
Photography. Well, actually, my brother was the photographer in the family. He actually went to Pasadena Art Center for photography.
Uh-huh.
And so he actually got a degree in photography. And so he was the one that actually influenced me. And, in dentistry, part of marketing is to take photographs and to do before and afters and all that stuff. And so my brother would be the one setting up everything for me. And unfortunately, he passed away. And so I feel that I'm just kind of carrying on his legacy of photography. Every time I go out there and do landscape photography, and it kind of reminds me of my brother. When I do portrait photography, it reminds me of my brother. So in a way, part of me is part of him. So
When did he pass away?
he passed away. Gosh, he passed away at age 42. So it's been almost 20-something years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. He passed away from lupus, complications from lupus.
Wow.
And so, yeah, systemic lupus. It was pretty severe.
Yeah. How did he end up? How did
How did he become a photographer?
Yeah. So I mean, was your dad okay with him, or your family okay with him becoming a photographer and not a doctor too, or was there angst there?
Oh, they thought that was ridiculous for him to become a photographer, especially get a degree being a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
But my brother, what happened was he was supposed to be a nurse because my father said, well, if you're not going to be a doctor, then why don't you get a nursing degree? Mm-hmm. Well, he took up a college course, a photography course, one of those requirements, and he ended up winning a couple of awards in photography. And so he thought, hey, this is fun. So he would spend his time in the darkroom. His best friend, Tom Oliva, to this day, he's a photographer, and Tom and my brother would be in the darkroom all the time, and then I'd visit him and just saw a little bit of the darkroom with him. But I was never that into photography. I thought it smelled too much in the darkroom. So
yeah.
Thank God about Photoshop.
Yeah. So did you get into photography really in the digital world? Is that pretty much where you got into it?
Pretty much once. Well, actually, I started taking more classes in photography because I started going through the AACD accreditation process. Mm-hmm. And so at the time they required, this is way back when, they required negatives, or not negatives, but more of slides to present to the committee. And so, I needed to be good at photography with slides because it was getting too expensive. So every time you take a picture and it didn't come out well, then of course you're paying for it. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to really get good at exposure because you have to pay every time you make a mistake.
Right. And when you're shooting slides, you have to know you can't look at it immediately on a slide.
No. Thank God for digital. So it's a lot more fun now.
Yeah.
And I don't have to smell the chemicals in the dark room.
In your dental practice, and then how did you transition to start using it just for fun and for a hobby outside of the practice? How did that become a thing? Because for those that aren't dentists, there's lots of dentists who take pictures in the office only, and they don't ever use their camera outside of the practice. And so Bernie has taken his skills into other areas beyond just shooting teeth. And I think how'd you start doing that?
Well, what happened was I was asked to give lectures on how to do portrait photography. There was a lot of dentists that were taking pictures and they were lecturing on how to take clinical photography. I started doing portrait photography because I figured that it's the face that actually is the product and not just the teeth itself. So so I started teaching that. And then this guy named James Fondriest, he's another dentist who also loves to take portraits. And so he asked me one day, he said, "Hey, have you ever taken landscape photography?" I'm like, "No, I've never done that." And he says, "Hey, you should come with me one day. We should shoot and take some pictures in the wild." And so I ended up, he ended up asking me and inviting me to go to a landscape photography workshop with a professional photographer. And so it was Death Valley. That was my first time to take landscape photography was Death Valley. And that was with Gilbert Young also. He's a ceramist. And so Gilbert, Jim, me, and a couple of other non-dental people went out to Death Valley. And pretty much Jim kind of took off on his own and left me behind. And I've never taken landscape photography before. And so he goes off, and I just kind of try to learn photography on my own. As far as composition wise, I didn't know what to shoot, so I just kind of like pointed and take shots.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was a big learning curve. It was fun though, but it was just, ever since then, Jim invited me to go to Iceland, and also Monument Valley. But that's when I asked you to go to Iceland. It was when Jim asked me to go to Iceland.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Jim he's integral in both of our photography careers. That's for sure. He definitely is a inspiration for both of us, for sure.
Yes. Ever since then, I got hooked, and you got hooked, and now we're all hooked. So as you and I try to do is we try to pass it on to other dentists. Mm-hmm.
That's been the most rewarding thing for me. I mean, I know what that first trip to Iceland did for me, and I think it's been fun to be able to put these together to try to bring other people along, which is pretty cool. So what?
Remember back then when we were out there all alone, just you and I, and we're thinking we're not going to sleep at all because this might be our only chance to ever do this.
Yep.
Because we weren't sure if we were ever going to go back to Iceland, right?
That's right.
We're like, it's 24 hours of sunlight. And so we're like, we're not sleeping at all.
It's true. Yep. We would go get back to our hotel room at about like 5 o'clock in the morning and have to leave like at 10 in the morning,
Right.
Yep.
Right. And little did we know that we're going to go back a couple more times.
I know. Yeah. Bernie and I have been to Iceland 3 times together. So we've made it a place to return to for sure. So what would you consider your greatest success?
Everybody always says this, but I really think it is. It's raising my 3 kids and having a marriage that's still together and a loving marriage. And so, I didn't mess them up. So that's, I guess that's one of my major accomplishment is because I don't think I messed them up at all. But you'll have to ask them that.
How do you think you did that? What did you do? What did you do to help them?
Well, one, it's my wife and I. It's a team effort. I'm lucky to have a wife that was involved in whatever my weaknesses was her strength, and so I think that's we tend to be there for our kids, and so I was fortunate enough to be able to have my wife stay at home. She was a CPA for several years, and then after the third, our daughter came around. She became a full-time housewife mother, and so I think her staying home, giving the kids what they needed, and giving them a good education in an environment that's loving, you get to keep them busy, keep them interested, make sure that they're not hanging around with the wrong people. So, just all those things, and making sure that they go to a good school with good role models. So it can't really mess up that much.
Yeah. And they still want to come home and see you, right?
Exactly. But of course, they get into those teenage years, and then they start thinking, we don't want to spend as much time with
Dad,
with the parents. So, which is a normal thing. So, but hey, they come back around.
Yeah. What is your greatest career success?
Career success? I don't know. I mean, I guess getting the accreditation with the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, that's actually opened up a lot of doors for me. Lots of platforms for me to talk about cosmetic dentistry.
When did you do that? You were like one of the first ones to do that, weren't you? Or early on, right?
Yeah, that was back then with slides. So I got
like 2000, before 2000?
2006 was when I received my accreditation with the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry.
Wow. Yeah. So in 2006, they were still using slides.
They were starting to move away from slides, but I was probably one of the last people to present with slides.
Wow. Yeah. And so did that open doors for you to lecture and teach other dentists how to do stuff? Is that?
Yeah, it made me a better dentist because I had to prepare to teach other people. And so, it made you become a better teacher if you're going to be teaching other dentists or other people. So,
So how many lectures do you typically, or how many lectures would you do like a year to teach dentists, like photography and stuff like that?
Well, it used to be more, about 5 or 6 times a year.
Okay.
But, but now I consider myself the old fogey guy, that's been around. Now there's newer dentists that have better slideshows. Well, because they don't have slides, they have PowerPoint and
videos.
So, it's a different world now. I mean, there's talk about digital. I was there at the cusp of digital, but now it's just gotten even more sophisticated.
Yeah. It is easy to think like you get passed over a little bit, huh?
Sometimes. Yeah, and also as we get older, you start realizing that time is getting shorter for us. Mm-hmm. So instead of, I think I've done my contribution to dentistry with that, and now I feel like I should do more of the things I want to do, more of the landscape photography, more traveling. Mm-hmm. And of course, taking more of the continuing education courses that are out there, and we're always learning, so always new stuff.
It is interesting how how as each year goes by, what seems important kind of changes. Or early on in your career, it's like being what you thought was important it kind of disappears. Other things become more important.
Yeah, and what drives you is your passion. So you have to find out what your passion is, because you just don't know. I mean, I lost my brother when he was in his 40s, and so you just never know when God decides to call you up there. And so I figured, might as well do it now, because you might not be around to do it later. So, yeah.
Do you have any regrets so far? Any big regrets that you wish you had done something different?
Regrets? Well, yeah, I guess, spending the time with the people that's no longer in your life. That's, sometimes you feel that you've got time in the world to be with them, and then when they're no longer there, it's like, I could have, spend more time with them. And at the time, you think you're spending more time with them, but then when they're gone, you want to spend more time with them. Mm-hmm. And so probably that's one of of course, I lost my father, my mother, and my brother. So I'm kind of like the only person left. Thank God I have my family. Mm-hmm. But, sometimes I feel, when I reminisce about the old days, I should have spent more time here. When my father asked me to go to Best Buy or something, instead of saying no, I should have said yes.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
Yeah.
I think, you don't know what you've lost when you've lost it until you've lost it. So.
Yeah. And I think that's really difficult. It's difficult to understand until they're gone. I don't think there's any way to actually predict how you're going to feel when they're gone and to prevent you from feeling that way.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish you
time
could.
goes by quickly.
Yeah. And I think every single interaction, all we have is time. And sometimes you just don't know how much time you're going to think you needed because it's never enough.
Yeah. And one of the things that I see nowadays is the quality time is no longer there. It's like we're too engrossed in our phones and social media, and that quality time of at the table eating. We make it a point now that we put our phone aside just so that we spend quality time with my kids and my wife, and that we actually have a communication.
That's a really good idea. That's something that I've been meaning to do. And I mean, this whole quarantine, it's like my phone has been attached to my hand the whole time. And I need to just detach myself from my phone. It's a really good thought bubble. I think, moving on from this episode in our lives, I mean, it's not a bad idea to put your phone away for a couple hours a day and just to be.
And it's pretty cool too, because it's not, I screw up all the time, and my daughter always says, "Dad, take your phone, put it away." And it's my kids that actually are doing it, which is cool.
Yeah,
and so
that is cool.
I'm like, so I enjoy them, I guess, correcting me or just, it's like, okay, you were raised right.
Yeah, and you can take it from them, so that's pretty cool. Because not every dad, will take it from their kids. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So, what is your greatest fear?
I don't really have any fear except for, of course, how I die. Like when we're doing these photography trips of ours, it's
mm-hmm.
like, we want to make sure we don't fall off the ledge, because that's a fear, is falling off a ledge, or, getting into a car accident when we're driving half asleep through Iceland
mm-hmm.
and we're dozing off, and, just things like that. It's like, making sure that you're aware of what's going on. But, I don't have too much fear except for things that are out of your control. And if it's out of your control, it's out of your control. So you shouldn't fear it. So yeah. I guess fear comes when you don't know what to expect.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'll have to tell a story though, because in a couple of years ago, Bernie and I took our two sons to Iceland, and we rented a van, and we spent 8 days in Iceland in a van, and we got close to dying a couple times on that trip. There was a couple at least 3 near-death experiences that I can think of, and we had somebody watching over us, I believe we had somebody watching over us, because there was one night Bernie was driving in the middle of the night. We'd been up all night, and he literally, we were all sound asleep, but Bernie was driving with the music on, and he somehow got us to our hotel there, or got us to our parking lot where we slept that night. So that was one episode. And then the next day, I forgot to set the parking brake, and I almost got out of the car, and and the van almost went off the side of a cliff. That didn't happen. That was fine. We actually made it. And then we actually raced out to go see the puffins out on the edge of the cliffs in Iceland, and we only had about a half an hour to get to make it out there. And so driving out there as fast as we could was a little scary too, but we made it.
Especially with the narrow road.
Yeah, the road were like one lane going out there. So Bernie and I have had a few experiences that were probably a little too close for comfort, that I think if our family members knew that we were that close, I mean, they'd be like, I don't know about that.
Don't take the kids.
Yep. So, you can't take the kids anymore. So what's your greatest inspiration?
Greatest inspiration? Well, it's well, yeah, I don't know if it's inspiration. More of a, I guess, what my father would always say to me. I'm not sure if it's an inspiration or not, but it's, my father would always say, lost riches could always be recovered, but time wasted will never, ever return. So throughout my whole life, that's what my father would always repeat over and over and over again. Lost riches could always be recovered, but time wasted will never, ever return. So I guess that's where the quality of time comes in for me. And so, because it's time that's important, not material goods.
Yeah, I like that. That's really an interesting quote, especially in 2020 and during coronavirus. I mean, it's, lots of people have lost a lot of riches, but we have gained time. And so I guess the question is, what do we do with that time?
Yes.
And how do we use that time wisely to affect change for the rest of our lives? I think that's an opportunity for us. It's hard to see right now, but that's an opportunity, right?
Right. And riches could be in so many different ways.
Right.
So
that's true. You're right. So what would your current self say to your young self?
My current self. Oh, gosh, I don't know. Take the time to smell the roses,
Were you always in a hurry as a kid to get stuff done, or did you make sure you had a good time when you were a kid too?
Well, you just kind of like, here's, you're in college, time flew by quickly. You're in high school, time just flew by quickly. And it's like, now that my kids are out of, they're on their own, and, it's like time flew by quickly there too. And it's like, I guess just the same thing over and over again, quality time, just because I feel that that's the most important thing to do is that. So yeah. My old self would say, just take it slowly and just take it all in while you still can.
Yeah, I think there's a sense that when you're in high school and college that it's gonna last forever. Like it's just, you're gonna get to 60 years old, lickety, that's like forever away. And then you get closer to 60 and you're like, oh my gosh, that went pretty fast.
But, it's kind of interesting here in LA. Well, not just LA, but everywhere. You look at Yahoo News or any of these, and you hear about a rapper that passed away at 20 something, or somebody's always passing away at an early age, and you just thinking, wow, they had a whole life ahead of them. Just there he goes. So kind of morbid thinking, but
yeah, I mean, think of Kobe. I mean, he was 40
yeah, exactly.
44.
Right.
I mean, yeah. No one's guaranteed a tomorrow, so it's at some point you have to live each day like it's your last, right?
Yeah. There's another quote that I like. It's, most people spend their health getting wealthy when they are young, then they spend their wealth trying to get healthy when they're old.
I like that. I like that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, as we're getting older, it's like, yeah, I better eat better exercise better, because I want to be around longer. So I got to take care of your body and, take the time to see less stress.
Yeah. Do you have any mentors? Or do you have any heroes, or have you had a lot of mentors along the way, or that you looked up to?
Yeah, there's so many out there. I mean, there's so many that come in and out of your life all the time. There's and you see their influence in somehow or another. Of course, my brother was a big inspiration to me with photography. My father, with all the things that he's taught me about how to be a man and how to treat other people. My mother, of course, was a big inspiration to me. But, as far as dentally, there's one guy that Dr. Bruce Crispin, he's he has a teaching institute here called Aesthetic Professionals, and he's changed my whole entire career. Basically, I took his residency workshop in cosmetic dentistry, and from there, he kind of guided me to a different path, and which I credit to him. And he continues to teach other dentists to this day. So I look up to him a lot. So, and of course, there's Bob Barkley and Frank Spear and Coyce and all those other people. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big fan of surrounding myself with people that know a lot more than I do. I mean, I think there's a big value to that, because there's no way that you can know enough on your own.
No, and sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
you just have to do it better.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think there's value in taking little pieces and little bits and bites from all sorts of different mentors along the way.
Yeah.
Now, were you always one to gravitate towards mentors even as a young person, or did you fight it at all? Did you ever think you no, I know it well enough, I don't need to ask somebody for help?
Oh no, I'm kind of completely the opposite. I'm kind of completely the opposite. I'd rather hang around with people that know more than I do, because it's like, why would you want to spend time with somebody who knows less than you do? To me, it's just kind of, I hate to say it, a waste of time if you can't learn.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly like you're an influence in my life, and I'm sure your father has been an influence. But it's I try to hang out with people that I can learn from.
Mm-hmm. That's so. Cool. Do you enjoy mentoring? Do you enjoy being a mentor?
Yeah, I do, because I need to give back, and hopefully I can pass along some of my knowledge, and hopefully it can influence them as well. So to be a better dentist, to be a better person.
That's cool. What keeps you moving forward? What gets you up in the morning? Sugar?
Sugar? That's my energy. I think probably my downfall too is sugar. It's bad for you. There's so many things to experience out there. So I don't know. I mean, I still want to go Patagonia. I still want to do a lot of, maybe do implants someday, travel more, experience the world more. I don't know. Life is life. There's so much to do. So I guess that's my motivation. As long as I wake up in the morning. Like, thank you, Lord.
Yep. Just keep you going, right?
Yep. Keep going.
That's cool. I mean, I think having something to always look forward to and having things to move forward into is something that is pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like if I don't do anything, if I just kind of sit around and not do anything, it's kind of a waste of time. I mean, what was it? You can stop doing things when you're dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I forgot. How's that go again?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So if you're sleeping, you're not doing anything.
Yep. So to wrap this up, I'll tell one other story about Bernie and I, because Bernie has literally changed my life. So Bernie has been a big inspiration in my own personal life. 2014, I just become friends with him on Facebook. I knew him a little bit. I met him just briefly in passing, but we started showing photos on Facebook, and I took pictures, he took pictures, but we really didn't know each other that well. And then I'm at a course and he sees me and he's like, "Doug, do you want to go to Iceland?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to go to Iceland," but I didn't think I could go. And he's like, "There's only room for one. I need to know like in 2 hours." And so,
yeah.
And so I'm like, I quickly made arrangements. I quickly figured it out. And I took a leap of faith and I said, I'm going. And I had never used a tripod before that trip. I had never really shot a landscape image before that trip. And I'd never been on a photo trip before that trip in Iceland. So every single photographer who says that they'd never have done it before, I had really never done it before that trip either. And that trip literally changed my life completely. And so it is so rewarding to actually be able to take other dentists and other people. We take other people out with us too. You don't have to be a dentist to come on our trips. And we don't actually they're not really organized trips. They're just kind of like a group of people that go. But every single person who goes, almost all of them want to come back on another one. And I think
on a different trip.
On a different trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, the trips are hard to explain. The trips are hard to put into words. But they are, and I mean, Bernie puts a lot of them together. I help him a little bit, but most of them are Bernie's trips. But they're literally are life changing for lots of people. And, I think the beauty of what Bernie does is that Bernie's able to, bring people together that are a good group of people. He's able to influence people in various ways that he's not even capable of understanding. He's able to touch people and be friends with lots of people in a lot of different ways. And he really does a great job of changing people's lives, which I think is a pretty cool gift that Bernie has. And I would say that is truly Bernie's biography, because he's literally able to change somebody's life.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. It's just passing it on, right?
That's it. Just passing it on.
Yeah. And look what you've done with photography. It's incredible what you've done with photography yourself. So it's awesome.
Yeah, we're all on our own journey, and I think that's what's pretty cool about it, and I think that's, I think if we can all touch another person along the way, we've, kind of tapped somebody and nudged them in the right direction. And that's what's pretty cool.
And that's what our legacy is going to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Helping other people. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So if we're able to touch one more person with this chat, then I think that's pretty cool too. How can people find you on the internet, and how can the people find your photography, Bernie, and find your website, and how can people look you up and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Bernie Villadiego. So
that's the easiest place.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I'm sure. I mean, if you don't, just ask other people or Google me.
I'll put a couple links in the notes. I think you have an Instagram page that you should use once in a while.
Yeah, I should do more Instagram page. Exactly.
So, all right, Bernie, thanks for the chat. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug.
You're an inspiration to all of us, man. All right?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Cool.
Bye.